knock it down and start all over again. We've seen that many times in the comments. Today I'll explain our reasons for preserving as much as we can of this building. We love the look of this building. We've always loved the look of it. And our ambition is to preserve the architectural heritage of the landscape. And as Dan explained before,
this house sits perfectly in the landscape. It blends in. It's almost part of the terrain. And that's because the house is built from rocks that are hewn from the very earth that the house sits on.
It's not going to be a carbon copy of what it was. We can use the resources that we've already got here, like the stones that have already had to be taken down, stones that we've stacked up over on the far side. And that means using a lot less concrete and steel than we would do if we had to start it up again. And to be honest, I'm not sure our budget would have stretched to having stonemasons complete the whole house from top to bottom, even with a concrete and steel structure, because it means that they have to build up 2 walls and then have to find all the stones. And the thing about these stones is that there doesn't seem to be many available to get if you want to buy them newly quarried, because all of the schisto that seems to be available now is much darker. So it would, and almost black, like they have in Piedão. And that's not the colour of the stones that are here. Ever since the day and hour that Dan and I bought this property, I've thought about every single rock that has been hand cut and carefully selected for each particular place on the building. All the cornerstones used on the doorways, the windows, and the corners of the building. And the care that went into that, and the love that created this very building that was a home for many, many people over the years. Over the last 3 years, we've had the privilege of meeting many of the family members who have lived here, visited here over the years. Some of those have moved abroad to Canada and far off places and come back for family reunions in the holiday times. And this weekend we had a couple who came by, or actually a family of 4, and as soon as they walked in, the first thing they did was look up to where the kitchen was, and they explained how they remembered the kitchen and the smile on their face and sitting around the big table having meals all the time. And that's not the first time we've heard that story. So there's a kind of a soul preserved in this house. I know it sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but it's one of those things like when you meet somebody and you just, you know when you know. And a bit like a house, many people say they just knew it was the right house for them. They might be houses with bathrooms and kitchens and roofs and doors and windows and things, but you know, horses for courses. That table that I was telling you about, the one that people remember sitting about, well, that's the same table that you may have seen Dan and I sitting around having meals. There was a gentleman who had lived here over 70 years ago as a child. And as he walked around, and we hadn't done a thing to the house, he just walked around the land and there were tears in his eyes, and he told us the story about where the bees were kept and all of those kind of stories. And it's fabulous being able to have the history of the house and still be meeting family members. Renovating a house like this isn't the easiest thing. You need skilled builders, nerves of steel, And you need to be prepared for the unexpected. Dodgy walls, walls that need reinforcing, walls that are going to come down. Who knows? We don't know what's the next unexpected thing. A long time ago, I helped my father restore an old stone cottage in Ireland, in Donegal. And my father did everything himself. But it took 5 years. And I think my parents were expecting about 2 years maximum. But there you go. These are the things that happened. It turned out beautiful, but it really took it out of my parents. It exhausted them. My father said, if you buy character, you're going to buy a lot of work. And he was right. But even though I'm not a child anymore, I still don't listen. Yeah, you just got to do what your heart tells you. Bonkers it may be, but that's how it is. We're 3 months in, and you know, I've had 1 or 2 sleepless nights just worrying about different things that there's no point in worrying about, because worrying doesn't change anything. And aside from that, you know, it's been such a joyous time. I mean, looking at it in the sort of the state that it's in doesn't bring me any great joy, but I'm kind of looking beyond that and seeing the process, watching the builders, experienced men with years of work in these kind of buildings in this area, and it's just fascinating watching them. I love it. It would have been much quicker to take it all down and start afresh, is another thing that people have said. And that I'm not sure I can agree with, because we waited the best part of 2 years, well over 18 months, to get go through the full process of planning and getting the licenses to build. We have friends that have started from new, and they have waited 5 years for their planning permissions to get started. Some a little bit more. One good thing is that since, well, whether it's a good thing remains to be seen, from the 4th of March this year, new planning laws came into force, and that is meant to make the process much simpler and quicker in future. So for anybody starting from now, they should be in luck with time. But enough about that. Let's get on and see what happened this week. Will you tell the lovely people what your thoughts are since you came back from your work trip?
Well, the progress has been huge. Walls are starting to go up. There's a floor inside. We can actually walk around and see what the space looks like. So today they're putting the temporary floor in the office space so they can carry on building walls up in order to get the roof on.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's April, and yeah, look at the state of us, wrapped up in winter clothes. I know the sun's shining, but it's kind of, you've got blue sky on one side, black sky on the other. It's been so wet and cold. Actually, as soon as Dan came back from his trip, the first thing I said to him was, we need more firewood. So I sent him off with a splitting wall. So you have to trim the paths?
Yeah, needs to do a bit of trimming while the sun is shining.
So the guys are working on the office, whoops, and we've got scaffolding up everywhere. Well, they're setting up a platform so they can get more scaffolding up to start building, and all the scaffolding's gone up here. So that idea that I had of saving myself for the little stool situation with Dan and I sitting in the stool, well, that view's a little bit different. So that never happened. I should have done it myself. So it's over behind here that the men are working, and it's a bit of a tight space, so I really can't film much today in relation to that little working space. And we're all agreed, the little window, we're going to keep it. Have a quick peek out, see what the men are up to. Well, it's all setting up lines today. I think I'm a little bit crooked, but never mind. A lot of goings on, but nothing really to show you because you can't see string lines. But later on, maybe, or tomorrow morning, we'll have a look again and see what's happened. Dan's still strimming away. He's got to strim the paths, even though it's only been 3 weeks since he trimmed. So he's got to trim the paths this time, and now we'll leave all the sections between the paths to grow again.
Well,
here's the rain again. Oh, it relents. So Rui told me the chainsaw, saw is Sarah, now cortar manteiga, so it wouldn't cut butter. Not the chainsaw, the table saw. Dan, I've got something sort of a wee bit bad to show you.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a tree.
No. Which one?
Cork oak.
Oh, what, the whole tree?
No, but quite a lot. I know it's raining, but do you want to go down and see?
Yeah, let's go and have a look.
Okay. It's here.
Looking at how it's broken, it looks like it was rotten in the middle, or rotten halfway through.
Yeah, but it's quite sad to see. It's such a big limb.
The tree is now very unbalanced. All of its branches are on that side of it. It looks like the tree needs to be pruned a bit, but I don't know how much we're allowed to prune a cork oak. We're not allowed to cut it down, but how much can we prune it?
Well, I'm in the little veranda, and I think you can just about see that the guys are building up, creating the lintels, or well, part of the lintel for the doorway and the window. You may notice that this wall has changed. So I'm actually in Dan's office, and this wall was all plastered, and you can see the stones are beautiful because this would have originally been the outside of the house, and then this little bit was added on at a later date. But we have an issue, so we've had to take the wall down to at least floor level, because if you look here you'll see that here the whole wall is leaning and falling over. So that section of the wall at least has to come down, but it will be rebuilt. Some of the stones are amazing. This big log here is this end of wood is actually the beam, the edge of the beam that runs the full length of the house. It's so beautiful. This is a view from Dan's office, which will be my editing suite if he's working away. I guess otherwise I'll be back on the kitchen table. It's quite a small little room. It's not small in square footage, square meterage. It's about 10 square meters, but it's really just over 2 meters wide from here to here. So it'll be quite small, and we're thinking maybe putting in a little folding single Murphy bed if we can find space for it somewhere. Just be a nice idea. Maybe it'll be somewhere I can sneak off and look out into the sun, like a little day bed when I'm not doing the garden. But let's have a look out. So if he looks round to the side, you could see the orange tree, although that's got to have a huge pruning in the summer. It's grown double the size since we first came here, and we already pruned it. I think he'll be facing this wall so he's not distracted. I'll be waving into him. Hi Dan, I'm in the garden making a video for YouTube. So while the guys were working yesterday, they were chipping off the plaster, so there's no white plaster visible anywhere in the house now. So I'll just show you around. Now that all the plaster is gone. But they did show me a really interesting thing about the plaster, and I'm going to go in close to show you. So all this plaster, so this is traditional lime plaster, and it was made with lime, very fine sand and egg whites. I'm not even sure if it was sand or if they added that in later, but it's very tiny little bits of grit and things. It was painted in lime paint. It got a beautiful chalky finish, really gorgeous. So initially we were going to plaster this wall, and it seems an awful shame now when we see the plaster removed how beautiful the stones are. So we're going to keep the original schist stone, and the top part, which will be built up to the ridge line, will be in blocks and plaster afterwards. So this little seat will actually be in the living room, and it'll open into the office. And what we're hoping to do is put one of the metal windows that was originally on the front of the house in here, because although it's single glazed, it doesn't really matter because it's still on the inside of the house. We have managed to save the shutters that were already here, and they're in pretty good condition, but I've taken them home to treat them for woodworm and sand off the rough edges and put linseed coating on them. So we'll get those back, and I think that'll be a really nice feature, and considering it's not everything we've been able to save. And I'd said before about keeping these, because these walls, these things are big pieces of stone, and it was right up in this corner, up in these corners. I'll show you where I spotted the newspaper, way up in there. 100-year-old newspaper.
101, viu? Tem
Amigo do
uma.
povo.
Coimbra.
And the money.
Where's the money?
Where is the
Come
money?
on, Manuel. Manuel. Onde dinheiro?
Manuel já guardou.
Dinheiro.
Onde é que está o dinheiro?
Onde é? Ouro?
Olha, está a dizer ele que está no cofre. Vocês é que sabem onde é que o esconderam.
1923?
Colégio de Irmesia.
No, this one down.
That college
From 1923.
Achavam no voar, mas onde é que foi? Achavam no cofre. 1915, este ainda é mais velho. Setembro de 1915, terça-feira.
3 de maio
1950.
De setembro, terça-feira de setembro de 1915.
1915.
1915.
1915.
1915, yeah.
Esse ainda aqui tem 100 e...
101, sim.
Esse já tem 110 ou quase. 109 anos.
You have to keep that. And then you put
This
in,
one,
you make a
Coimbra.
wall.
Coimbra,
A wall of
11 de
fame.
fevereiro de...
1993.
Sim,
Este, 915.
sim, 915.
1915, ainda mais velho do que esse.
1915.
Wow, you found it.
No, it's the
No.
same.
I didn't see this one, 1915.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Ah, wow, wow. There's the. We'll maybe take this to the university or something to give it to the university, or maybe make a wallpaper.
Yes. I think.
Oh, can't wait to show this to Fatima. She can read it for us. Oh.
Huh?